So yeah, the topic is deep tech and beyond the grant. 1 lakh crores is what the government has just promised as allocation towards catalyzing innovation in the deep tech space. On the other side, we have a robust venture capital ecosystem, lots of money over there, and deep tech is getting funded. But a lot of stuff is getting missed out in the middle. So what we're going to talk about with this panel, where we have 2 investors, we have someone who's played multiple roles across government and now is doing something at the ecosystem level. And of course, one of the largest incubators in the country, one of the oldest as well. So diverse views. Maybe we'll start with the incubator in the room, Anand.
Sure.
Because you've been at this, NSRCEL's been around 25 years now, which is impressive. You have a massive ecosystem of people, and a lot of them are in the deep tech space. And you are allocating funds out to people, but you're also working directly with those startups.
Yes.
Where do you see the gaps today?
See, we have half an hour, but we'll try and do this in 30 seconds. I'm not sure I want to classify it firstly as gaps. I think where our challenge lies is in right fitting given the environment. If I look at our founders, especially in the deep tech space, they're on the long haul. And for capital infusion, a combination of right size, right time, especially in deep tech, is a little important. What I mean by that is right size, firstly, there are some problems which are $10 problems. You can't throw a $1 check at it, right? And there is a minimum threshold in the context of deep tech because of the R&D intensity of the problem statements. That recognition is important. Right timing is, given the journey, what kind of capital infusion is relevant at what stage. Sometimes dilutive capital may not be relevant for a founder who is still in the pre-TRL 4-5 stages. But if I combine these two, the opportunities may lie where founders can imagine transitioning the journey with far lower capital requirement that one can imagine, which means if I can embed my startup thinking within an academic environment, within a research environment. And you spoke about the ANRF fund. The more interesting part of the ANRF fund, in my opinion, is the other 50,000 crores which is going in the ANRF core, which is helping build translational research capability in the country. And startups embedding in that, which means brings down your infrastructure requirement, brings down your talent requirement, brings down your early prototyping requirement. So you don't need high capex injection if you're being smart about it. I think for a deep tech founder, this configuration of how do I be smart about how I pace myself might be important.
So I get that. And of course, founders being smart with capital is a really wise way to look at it. A lot of them don't know where this infrastructure lies. How do they get access to some of that stuff? Do you help point people in those directions?
Yeah, so the easiest answer would be call me. Reach out to NSRCEL. It is the job of incubators to construct this. The problem statement is also peculiar because in the deep tech space, we are a business incubator. Business incubation and science and technology incubation are very intertwined. They're not linearly sequenced, unlike in other conventional technologies, like I think enterprise SaaS or something of that kind. They're not linearly sequenced. So the intertwined nature of scientific incubation and business incubation is very critical to get to a stage of mortality, at least get past the 2 valleys of death. Both between a technical incubator and a business incubator, this is our role. How do we convene the ecosystem, which is government, policy, investor, corporate, science and technology, market access, supplier networks, in a manner that reduces the risk of mortality.
So every deep tech founder out there, please get his number straight after this session. Moving over to Vamshi. You're with Kalaari, again, storied fund. You're on the board of some deep tech companies as well, and that's an area that you've been interested in. You've played the entrepreneur role in that space as well. How have you seen the ecosystem changing? Where do you see the gaps right now, and what are you looking for?
Yeah, I think picking on what Anand was mentioning, I think for me, when I look at this, I feel that there's enough and more grants sitting in the academia, and obviously, my own statement is that the capital is misaligned, basically, right? For me, I think there's enough capital. There's like a couple of $1 billion across several different structures for research and product development or IP development. The translation is where the problem is, and even with that translation, like what Mr. Anand was mentioning, there is a little bit of capital required before a venture capital comes into play to take it to the next level. And that gap is something where I think we all call it a valley of death, but no one is servicing that gap. Because in every segment, if you look at consumer or fintech or anything like that, the top of the funnel is large. But here there's no top of funnel. There's hardly anything. So if you pick, I want to say do semiconductors, there's like 200 investors who are going to come after semiconductors next year, but there's hardly 200 companies. So what will you do with it? Because you're not solving the gap problem, which is from the academia to the industry as such. So I feel the capital needs to be aligned properly, which means the allocation of resources from the ecosystem, like what Anand was saying, where there is strategic corporates coming into place, academia coming into place, the right kind of VCs coming into place to support that technology to cross over the valley of death. That capital needs to be there. Then I think we'll get that 2% which is there today, where the success rate is. I think he mentioned it a little higher. I think I feel it's like hardly 2% get over that. I think even if you can increase it by 2% more, I think we should be good.
So coming over to you, Jay, obviously we have a history, we building T-Hub, etc. So you've seen it at the ecosystem level. You've been an entrepreneur again with a successful exit. I know that you're an absolute nerd, love the deep tech space. Now you're with a Japanese fund. Why is a Japanese fund in India? What are you looking for when you look at deep tech today? Let's start with that.
No, thank you. Thanks for that question. Maybe a quick social experiment. How many folks here are in some way involved in deep tech? Okay, good. There's a decent number of hands. Otherwise, we could have switched topics and spoken about Trump and Modi and politics, right? But the answer to your question, I think it's important to set the context as to why Japan and what's going on in India, right? If you look at deep tech in Japan, since the Second World War, private funding from corporates has set the foundational base for deep tech. That's where most of the money came from. About 60-70% of deep tech allocation came from corporate capital. The US took a very different approach, right? The US took, after the Second World War, about 70% of it came from public corpus, which is about 2% of the country's GDP at that point. Forget India since the Second World War. I think India now is a good place to talk about. India today, private capital actually gave us enough of a foundation, and it's only now that public capital is getting institutionalized in a form wherein deep tech can play a role. So that's the context. Now, the answer to your question, Japan is in a state where there are three inherent challenges. One is the state of the economy as far as being entrenched with the US in terms of allocation to the treasury bonds. Number two, the state of the economy as far as demographics is concerned. And the third thing that's going on in Japan is a lot of cash reserve with large corporates is trying to find a way to get to markets where there is growth. And India lines up very well on all those three fronts, right? Growing economy, fantastic demographic. We've always been geopolitically aligned. And for those reasons, and of course there are many more, right? The talent base in India is incredible. There are structural challenges, but it's still incredible. I think for those reasons, not just us as a fund, but there are multiple Japanese funds now setting up in India. And to both Vamshi and Anand's points, can we look at that proverbial valley of death where funds like us, I think both of us are part of that ecosystem, can we take a little more risk and go in early and have a long-term view? While the funds, usually the term is 10 years. I think that's where we need, at least as fund managers, that's what we need to look at from a capital allocation standpoint.
So, obviously India, from a research perspective, used to be a country where research was measured by papers published. It's gone to applied science now. Commercialization is still, if not missing, at least not as common, right? So you work with early stage founders. What do you look for beyond the tech itself for you to invest into a company?
Yeah, this is a good question. I'd love to hear your opinion on this, but there is, I think, a fine balance, right, between grants and venture money. There's this phrase that you might have heard called grantrepreneurs. We have some portfolio companies where they just love grants. They just refuse to scale. And I think it's good to a certain degree. The flip side of it is also true. Venture money, ideally, I'll speak for ourselves, loves the ability where CapEx is underwritten by grants and VC money can go in for growth. So how do you find that balance, right? And I think the answer to the question is exactly that. Can grants come in such that CapEx to a large degree removes the risk from the equation and you're now propelled for exit velocity and you're at a position where venture capitalists can come in and say, hey, listen, this looks good. We'll get our 10x out of what you do next. The challenge is researchers, generally speaking, are not the best entrepreneurs. There is a DNA mismatch in terms of what one wants to do, like you said, publish papers and get into a sabbatical. And entrepreneurs are hustlers. They have zero interest in nerding out. Again, I'm generalizing, but that's my take, right? Can you sit in between and straddle the two and be successful? And I do think India is positioned really well. We're beginning to see some interesting developments in the country. I don't know if you agree or disagree or...
Yeah, I think at least what we have seen, because we have come very early into some of the early stage deep tech companies in this particular fund, like Digantra, Clean Electric and all that stuff, very early. I think what we have seen is the grants which have been there have been utilized properly to demonstrate certain capabilities which are aligned with where the market is right now from a tailwinds perspective. I think, of course, there's so much happening, but at least we see that, okay, you know, this founder is right to do this, product market fit, founder market fit, market fit. So basically, all these things need to come together for that particular call to be taken at that early stage, because otherwise you cannot really gauge what is going to happen, basically. But also the ability for the founder to quickly pivot, and like, you know, Digantra is a great example where we were talking about figuring out debris in the space, but suddenly the tailwinds are towards defense. Now they've become more of a surveillance. So it's a completely different ball game in terms of the ability of the founder to switch gears and you know, work with the market basically. So I think that's an advantage.
May I please comment? Yes. I think that couple of things I hope we don't generalize. One is, if we can separate out the difference between an invention and an inventor, not all fundamental researcher needs to be an entrepreneur, right? A painter needs to paint. You don't want a painter to write code, as a very poor analogy. The scientist entrepreneur is a rare breed. You'll always find an anthropic, but that's an outlier, right? Which is a scientist who chooses to build entrepreneurial agency and let go of research instincts or research fundamentals. Otherwise, a natural researcher will want to be published in a Springer journal and invited to an IEEE symposium. That is the natural DNA. But the path of his invention can still get to market. The route doesn't have to be through the scientist. If you get lucky and find a scientist entrepreneur, good. But if you can find paths to the fundamental research, which could be various models, you could look at co-founder models, licensing models, revenue models, corporate innovation models, EIR models. There are whole other models to get invention and innovation to market outside of the scientist. And I wish we don't say we publish 25 papers, but why don't we have 25 deep tech startups? That's an unfair generalization on ourselves. We're putting wrong burden on ourselves.
No, that's a really good point. I mean, foundational research versus applied research, plus just the, because of the panel composition, we're looking at deep tech startups specifically. That's not the only pathway. We'll come back to you.
Right.
Jay Garu, we've got you on the panel as well. You've had a storied history. You've built a company yourself that was acquired by NVIDIA back in the day. You've been a bureaucrat that built High-Tech City in Hyderabad. Today you're on a different mission completely, and it's a very interesting one. Junicorns. Do you believe that there is a thriving deep tech ecosystem in rural India as well?
Srini, actually, I started this foundation, International Startup Foundation, about 5 years back, only to help the early stage startups because most of them, as other panelists were telling, 90%, they're all dying in the so-called startup death valley. When we were conducting these conferences, networking, I noticed that a lot of rural people, they got very innovative ideas, but there is no proper mentorship for them and no proper funding for them. And they can't come to cities like Mumbai or Hyderabad or Bangalore because of the economic situation. On top of that, I noticed in my village, many of the youth are getting into drug addiction. Then I thought, if I had to pull them from drug addiction to the other addiction, there has to be positive addiction. Then I thought, let me try entrepreneurial addiction. Then that's when I coined the Junior Unicorn, Junicorn. We got the trademark license also recently. And with that, it's about 1 year, we first cohort we ran in 4 states, Karnataka, AP, Telangana, and Orissa. We told all the competition, the school, there are 2 categories. Below 18 years, one category, and 19 to 25, another category. We told everybody, pick up your local, hyper-local problems and come with an innovative solution. And those people, whoever we select, we take you all the way to US, and there you get exposed to all the investors, and you may get the funding and all that. That's how we started the first cohort. Surprisingly, we were able to get 40 such students. Most of them are orphan kids, and 50% of them girls from rural India. And we took all of them, selected ones to Austin, Texas, where they made the presentation. And many of them got funding. In fact, the recent second cohort in Dubai, about 70 such students from 18 states in India. And one company got acquired by another big company in Dubai, second cohort. So what I see, Srini, there are a lot of fire, a lot of interest. And in fact, one boy from Bihar, he was telling, sir, what you are seeing, only me. Come to Bihar, sir, there are thousands of such people better than me. They're all slogging, no mentorship, nobody is looking at them. And we can't come to the big cities for getting into the startup ecosystem. You should come to us and like what you are doing. I think I see a lot of potential. We can solve the drug addiction problem, and also we can solve a lot of problems in the rural India. Though Government of India and various state governments are spending a lot of money to create the proper infrastructure in rural India, still there are a lot of problems in the rural side of it. If only we identify a good Junicorn founder, and if we can solve that problem in a sustainable way, on one side, we are pulling them from the drug addiction and they're solving their own local problems. At the same time, we are creating a lot of people are coming from villages to the Hyderabad, Bangalore, Mumbai and all that. That migration also we can stop so that the rural people in their own area, they are able to become micro-entrepreneurs. I think the third cohort which is on now, we are conducting this Junicorn competition in 20 states. Hopefully, we'll be able to select a good number of people. And another problem, what I noticed is, most of these kids are all studying still in the schools and colleges. We're trying to identify whether somebody from the industry or somebody from the cities can become a co-founder along with them so that they can, whatever the idea that they're envisioning, they'll be able to take it to the next level. I'll tell you one example, Srini. One boy who was in 8th grade in one orphan school near Gannavaram airport, he selected a problem that he saw that plastics are there everywhere in the streets, in the school, everywhere. He thought of, burying the plastics in the buildings. And he went to the nearby internet kiosk and find out that up to what temperature, if he burns the plastic, it will not give the toxic gases. He compressed all the plastics, put the brick material around the plastics, and created a brick and took it to the nearby engineering college where is the civil engineering department and got all the tests done. And we picked up that boy. He came to Austin, Texas. He got the funding. Now he is building toilet rooms for many people in the rural areas. Public defecation is still happening. For them, he is building the toilet rooms using these bricks. He has already become a micro-entrepreneur and he is continuing his studies through the online studies and all that. And such people we are encouraging through the Junicorns program.
That's a very noble mission. That's an amazing story.
Thank you. I think we have to do all these things for the country. Otherwise, the drug addiction, other addictions are many more which are coming. And with AI, a lot of unemployment is going to happen. I think all these problems, we should find a solution. That solutions through startup way.
Thank you. So we're already almost out of time. So last round of, basically I just want each of you to say where do you think gaps lie today, or where do you think that as a country we can do better? What's the one thing that you think, if you could do one thing, what would that one thing be at the country level? Anand, maybe you can start. I know it's a big question.
Yeah, exactly. The country is a big place. Okay. And specifically to deep tech and deep tech entrepreneurship, I think if there was one thing I could do, and because you're giving me a 10-second on policy, like magic wand situation, if we can find a way where the incentives between corporate innovation, startup innovation, deep tech investment community, and research and academic community, if we can find a way for incentives to align, whatever the incentives, we often think of incentives in fiscal dimensions. Let's put a grant in place, right? But a lot of institutional incentives are not fiscal incentives. If we can find a way for incentives to align, the multiplier effect on what we expect out of the deep tech ecosystem could be beautiful.
Thank you. Vamshi.
I think completely aligned. I think if we can connect the dots between the IPs that are getting built and between the institutions and the industry, I think if we can connect that, I think we can create a lot of value from a deep tech perspective, because deep tech won't happen like consumers. So,
Jay.
With the luxury of waiting for two people to speak is you can think, right? But I think the answer is, see, all of us on the panel here are enablers. I think the real answer lies in the greatest currency of economic growth is in building, right? And therefore, my request and optimism lies in seeing more builders, more entrepreneurs. It's a fantastic time to build. It's a fantastic time to get capital. Policy tailwinds are fabulously aligned. India has immense talent. India is now a market. It's not just a cost center, it's a profit center. So my request to you would be build stuff. Great time.
My take is a lot of mentoring is required for many startups, not only urban startups and rural startups. Without proper mentoring, I don't think they can go anywhere. More than money, proper mentors. In fact, I am requesting everybody to donate 1 hour a week to mentor somebody in the rural area to guide him. Don't worry about the money and all that. All those things can come later. But mentoring is missing. Quality mentoring is missing. That's where I think India has to focus.
I agree. I think that is one aspect as well, that we have scientists, technologists, etc. They're not necessarily commercial minded, and even if they are, they're not the best at it. I think what you said, Anand, about being smart with not just looking for capital, but smart ways of extending your life, building out your research without capital alone, right? Vamshi, what you said as well about the industry connection. I think we need industry to get involved. At the end of the day, without that, these things don't happen again. And Jay, one of the things we didn't talk about is just some of the stuff that's happening in Japan, where they're helping these entrepreneurs to build out commercial technologies out of this sort of stuff, right? But I agree with you 100%. This is the right time. India's got aspiration. We've got talent. Everything is aligned. So if you're a startup building deep tech, just go out there and build and use every resource you can get to get there. Thanks, everyone.